パソコンディスプレイ、スマホなどから見ている皆様、こんにちは。鶴巻まきです。今回は TF-51D の操縦方法についての動画をお送りするよ。みんなも知っての通り、DCS ワールド本体は無料でインストールできるのは知っているよね。インストールすると2機種の機体が使用可能なんだ。それはスホイ 25T と今回の TF-51D。本題に入る前にね、この機体についての感想はね、はっきり言って操縦方法がむちゃくちゃむずい。まず最初にエンジン始動に手こずった。スホイ 25T のように電源つけてエンジン始動ボタンをポチッとなじゃないんだ。スホイ 25T の方が新しいから技術の進歩のありがたみを感じたよ。あと正直、現段階において計器類全部把握しているかと言われればそれも怪しい。エンジンの始動のみならずタキシングのやり方もスホイ 25T とは大きく違い、これまた困った。最終的にはやり方は分かったけど慣れた手つきではないことは理解してもらいたいところかな。動画の流れとしてはこんなところかな。こんな流れかな。はっきり言って派手な曲芸飛行も戦闘もない地味な動画になるよ。でもこれで TF-51D の操縦方法がわかるようになればケイスケ P も私も嬉しくなるし、今後のやる気につながるよ。早速本編に移るよ。今回も説明文は DeepL にて翻訳されたものを掲載するよ。
You can use mouse look mode to move your view around the cockpit. To turn mouse look mode on and off, press left Alt plus C. Throughout this lesson, pressing the spacebar key will initiate the next consecutive step once instructions for the current one are complete. Press the spacebar key when you are ready to begin. The cockpit is configured in a standard layout, with the instrument panel positioned on the front dash, a center-mounted control stick, a throttle quadrant on the left side, and various aircraft system controls on the left and right panels. With the exception of the flaps control handle, which is located in the bottom left corner of the cockpit, most of the indicators and controls are well organized and easy to read and reach. Moving on to the instrument panel, the upper left corner houses the remote indicating compass. The compass unit is installed inside the left
インジケーターナブにマウスカーソルを合わせて、マウスホイールを前に回すと時計回りに、後ろに回すと反時計回りに動くよ。リモートインディケーティングコンパスという聞き慣れない横文字が出てきたけど、これ簡単な話、方位磁石だよ。常に北に針を向けているやつだよ。
To turn the knob, you can simply roll the mouse wheel over it. To the right of the remote indicating compass
ナブを左クリックすると、ナブが引っ張られて動かすことができるよ。クリックしたまま、マウスホイールを前に回すと、時計の針は進み、後ろに回すと、時計の針は戻るよ。ここは早い話。計器の針が緑色のところにあれば問題なしといったところかな。
including the flight indicator, bank and turn indicator, and the directional gyro. A suction reading above or below normal means the readings of these indicators are unreliable.
なんか難しい技術的な話をしているようだけど、速い話エンジンの出力を表しているようなものだと思えばいいのかな。
The manifold pressure indicator shows gas pressure inside the engine induction system prior to entering the cylinders. Like the suction gauge, the indication is in inches of mercury. Manifold pressure is set using the throttle handle, while engine RPM is set using the propeller control lever, also on the throttle quadrant. On the left side,
自動車に例えると速度計みたいなものだね。
which shows an indicated airspeed in miles per hour, mph. The red line on the indicator marks the maximum permissible airspeed of 505 miles per hour. It's important to remember that maximum permissible indicated airspeed is reduced as altitude increases. For example, it is 400 mph at 20,000 feet and 300 mph at 30,000 feet. In the left center of the
上の方位磁石を基準にして修正すればいいのかな？修正のやり方は、左クリックをしながらマウスホイールを前に動かすと方位系は進み、後ろに動かすと戻るよ。
In the center right of the instrument panel is the flight indicator, which shows the aircraft's roll and
マウスホイールを前に動かすと、ピッチのメモリは上に動き、後ろに動かすと下に動くよ。左クリックしながらマウスホイールを前に動かすと、キャッチという記号が出てくるよ。左クリックしながらマウスホイールを後ろに動かすと、キャッチという記号が消えるよ。
To the right of the flight indicator are two temperature gauges, the coolant temperature gauge above and the carburetor air temperature below. It's important to monitor these instruments in flight, as temperatures rising above normal may lead to serious engine problems, such as detonation and pre-ignition. On the right side of the middle row of the instrument panel is the tachometer. This instrument indicates engine speed in revolutions per minute, RPM. The pilot controls engine speed using the propeller control lever on the throttle quadrant. A propeller governor system automatically adjusts propeller pitch angles to maintain the RPM set by the pilot. Typical RPM settings in flight will be between 1,800 and 3,000 RPM. Moving to the bottom row
ナ
of
ブ
the
の部分
instrument
にカー
panel,
ソ
the
ルを合わ
left
せて
corner
マウスホ
houses
イー
the
ルを前に
altimeter.
動かす
The
と、
altimeter
高度
shows
計は
barometric
時計
or
回りに
pressure altitude
後ろに
using
動
a
かすと
three-needle
反時
system.
計に回
The
り出す
shortest
よ。
needle shows altitude in tens of thousands of feet, the middle needle in thousands of feet, and the longest needle in hundreds of feet. The indicator knob is used to adjust the sea level reference pressure in inches of mercury to ensure an accurate altitude reading over a desired location where the sea level air pressure is known. Next is the bank and turn indicator, primarily used to maintain coordinated flight and minimize side slip. The vertical needle of the instrument indicates turn rate, and the slip ball indicates side slip or side skid. In flight, the pilot maintains the ball's center by using stick and rudder controls or aileron and rudder trim. Flight trim is very sensitive to changes in engine power and airspeed, so constant attention must be paid to the bank and turn indicator in order to fly as efficiently as possible. To the right is the rate of climb indicator, which shows the climb rate in thousands of feet per minute. Further to the right is the accelerometer, or G meter. This indicator shows the G load factor experienced by the aircraft, as well as two additional needles that show the maximum and minimum G loads attained since the instrument was last reset. The instrument includes a reset button used to reset the needles to zero.
ずっと思っていたんだけどこれなんだろうね。8番出口に出てくる異変かな？引き返した方がいいかな？
Moving below the instrument panel, the engine control panel includes a number of important engine controls. These include supercharger blower switch, sets the supercharger to low, high, or automatic blower modes. Normally this should be set to auto. The jewel light indicator lights up when the supercharger kicks into high blower mode. Fuel booster switch turns the fuel booster pumps on and off. Oil dilute switch, used to dilute the oil with gasoline, which may be necessary when starting in cold temperatures. Starter switch, used to turn the engine prior to ignition during startup. Primer switch, used to feed fuel to the engine through the fuel primer system during startup. To the right are the two landing gear warning lights. These indicate safe or unsafe states of the landing gear. For example, the unsafe red light will be on if the gear doors are open, but the landing gear is unlocked. Adjacent to the landing gear warning lights
パー
is the
クブレー
parking
キの
brake
部分
handle.
を左クリックし
Setting
た
the
まま、
parking brake
ダブル
requires
キ
the
ーを
following
謳歌すると引
steps.
かれたまま
Pull
にな
out
り、
and hold the
再
parking
び
brake
左クリッ
handle.
クして、
Fully
ダブルキ
depress
ーを
and
数
release
秒
the
間謳歌
brakes.
すると戻る
Release
よ。
the parking
単
brake
純
handle.
にダブルキーだ
Releasing
け
the
でも
parking
ギア
brake
ブレ
only
ーキが
requires
機
the
能す
press
る
of the
よ。
brake pedals. On the right side below the instrument panel are the oxygen indicators, the oxygen flow indicator, and the oxygen pressure gauge. The oxygen flow indicator features a blinker that opens and closes as the pilot inhales and exhales on-demand oxygen. The oxygen pressure gauge shows the amount of oxygen remaining in the O2 tanks in pounds per square inch, psi. A normal reading is 400 psi. Just below the instrument panel is the front switch panel, which includes a variety of important controls. Ignition selector switch selects the left, right, or both magnetos to operate the engine ignition system. Cockpit light switch turns on and adjusts the cockpit floodlights. Horn silence button silences the AN/APS-13 rear warning radar alarm. Below the front switch panel is the fuel control panel. This includes the fuel shutoff valve, used to open and close the fuel flow, and the fuel selector valve, used to select the fuel tank used to feed the engine. Correct fuel tank selection is important in flight to maintain a balanced aircraft. To the right of the fuel control panel are the hydraulic pressure gauge and the landing gear fairing doors emergency release handle. The landing gear fairing doors emergency release handle can be used to release the hydraulic pressure and mechanical locks holding the gear doors closed. This will open the fairing doors and allow the landing gear to fall down under its own weight. Slight rolling of the aircraft from side to side can be used to ensure the gear locks in place prior to landing. Normal pressure for the hydraulic system is 800 to 1100 psi. The surface control lock is used to lock the control stick in place when the aircraft is parked. Left-clicking over the pin locks the stick in a forward position, which leaves the tail wheel unlocked and allows the aircraft to be towed and turned easily. Right-clicking on the pin locks the stick in the neutral position, which leaves the tail wheel limited to 6 degrees of turn. Moving to the left side of the cockpit, the throttle quadrant dominates the forward section. The throttle quadrant includes the throttle handle, the propeller control lever, and the mixture control
4
lever.
と5の部分はマウスカーソルを合わせてマウスホイールを前に動かすとロックされ、後ろに動かすと解除されるよ。1と3の部分はマウスを左クリックしたまま動かしたい方向にドラッグすると動くよ。
Moving back from the throttle quadrant, the radiator air control panel includes switches to operate the coolant and oil radiator flap doors. These are usually kept in automatic, but can be opened and closed manually when necessary. This panel also includes the landing light switch and the left-hand fluorescent light rheostat switch, which controls instrument backlighting on the left side of the cockpit. Three trim wheels are used to set the aileron, rudder, and elevator trim. Take off with 5 to 6 degrees of right rudder trim to help compensate for engine torque. Trim settings in flight may vary depending on flight conditions. The two handles toward the left rear of the cockpit control airflow to the engine induction system. The ram air control handle controls whether air is ingested through the main intake under the nose or filtered intakes on either side of the nose. Filtered air is used when icing of the intake develops. The hot air control handle opens a vent door in the engine compartment to allow warm air to enter the carburetor. This can be done below 12,000 feet when icing of the carburetor is a danger.
ハンドル部分にマウスカーソルを合わせて右クリックするとハンドルは上がってフラップが上がるよ。左クリックするとハンドルは下がり、フラップが下がるよ。
The landing gear control handle is also on the left side. The handle is pulled in and moved up or down to raise and lower the landing gear as desired. The gear should only be moved when it's locked in either the up or down position. Now moving on to the right side of the cockpit, we have two canopy controls. The canopy is
赤い丸部分にマウスカーソルを合わせてマウスホイールを動かすとキャノピーが開閉するよ。ハンドクランクで開閉するなんて時代を感じるね。赤いハンドルも試してみよう。お、キャノピーが吹き飛んだね。
The oxygen regulator is used to control oxygen flow to the pilot's mask. The oxygen diluter lever, marked with yellow stripes, is used to set normal diluted oxygen or 100% oxygen. The red emergency valve is a separate backup oxygen line and can be used to bypass the regulator. The recognition light's keying switch is used to flash the recognition lights installed on the other side of the right wingtip when they are set to key mode on the electrical panel. The lights turn on for as long as the keying switch is held down and off when it is released. The electrical control panel includes switches for battery and generator power, pitot tube, and external lighting. In addition, the right-hand fluorescent light rheostat switch controls the backlighting for instruments on the right side of the cockpit. The electrical control panel also includes an important indicator, the ammeter. This shows current output of the generator in amperes. Maximum permissible output is 100 amperes. The ammeter does not show battery current. Finally, the electrical control panel also includes a circuit breaker bump plate. This can be pressed in to reset all the circuit breakers in case one or more of them gets overloaded and pops out. Further back from the electrical control panel is the AN/APS-13 Rear Warning Radar, or RWR. This device sounds an alarm when an object is detected behind the aircraft to warn the pilot of a possible threat approaching from the rear. Next is the SCR-522 VHF radio, used for communication with flight members and air traffic controllers. The radio features 5 channels, the frequencies for which are preset and cannot be changed in flight. You should consult your mission briefing prior to starting a flight to ensure your radio is set up to contact ATC towers in your vicinity. The remaining radio systems, including the homing adapter, IFF transponder, and Detroller range receiver, are not functional in this aircraft. Let's now take a look at the fuel gauges.
見え
You
な
may
い。
need to twist your head around the cockpit a little to see them. You can press left Alt plus C to enable mouse view mode, and then hold down the mouse wheel while moving the mouse to move your head around the cockpit. The gauges for the left and right main tanks are located on the floor to either side of the seat. Finally, the air
これもまた見え
seat
ない
also houses
見える
cockpit
方法わかる
environmental
人いるか
controls,
な
including windshield defrosting and cockpit heating and cooling. コックピットの紹介をさらりと流したけれども、今すぐこれ全部覚えたり理解する必要はないよ。今大切なのはエンジンの始動と操縦方法を理解できればいいよ。お次はそのエンジンの始動方法だよ。はっきり言って技術の進歩に感謝したくなるよ。すごい 25T とはわけが違う。Welcome to the startup lesson. Press the spacebar key to begin. The engine start sequence is not エンジンの始動手順はそれほど複雑ではありませんって言っているけど難しいよ。 Let's begin with the flaps control handle, positioned to the rear bottom left side of the cockpit. For a normal takeoff, flaps are not usually lowered. However, 15 to 20 degrees of flaps can be used when a minimum run takeoff is required. Set the flaps control handle all the way up to the up position. To do this, you can either click and drag the handle with the mouse or press left shift plus F command repeatedly until it is all the way up. Note, the flaps won't actually come up until the engine is running and there is sufficient pressure in the hydraulic system to raise them. Now set the carburetor induction system for normal operation by moving the cold air control handle all the way forward to the ram air position and the hot air control handle all the way forward to the normal position. Next, set the coolant and oil radiator air control switches to the auto position for automatic operation of the coolant and oil radiator flap doors. To do so, left-click on the auto switch positions. Don't forget to close the switch covers after. Adjust
マウスホイールで動かせるよ。
Set rudder trim to 5 degrees right. Elevator trim can be left neutral. Aileron trim remains neutral.
D レバーはページアップキーでレバーは押され、ページダウンキーでレバーは後ろに引くよ。
Set the throttle handle about 1 inch forward from the fullback position to slightly open the throttle butterfly valve and allow air to flow to the engine. If you don't have a throttle controller, the plus and minus keys on the keyboard numpad can be used to move the throttle handle.
なんかうるさいからキャノピー閉めるよ。
Moving to the engine control panel on the front dash, turn on the fuel booster pump by setting the fuel booster switch to the up position by clicking over the switch. Select the left and right magnetos to provide power to the engine ignition system by setting the ignition switch to both. On the fuel control panel, ensure that the left wing tank is selected for fuel consumption by checking that the fuel selector valve is set to the main tank LH position. Open the fuel shutoff valve by clicking on it to set it to the on position. Let's set the parking brake to make sure we remain stationary when the engine begins to pull. You may want to open the controls indicator by pressing right control plus enter to monitor the positions of your flight controls, including the brakes. Setting the parking brake takes a few steps. First, pull out and hold the parking brake handle by clicking and holding it. Next, while continuing to hold the parking brake handle, fully press the brake pedals by holding down the W key. Continuing to hold the parking brake handle, release the wheel brakes by releasing the W key. Now release the parking brake handle to set the parking brake. If done correctly, the parking brake handle should remain in the pulled out position. We'll now move on to the electrical control panel on the right side of the cockpit. Set the battery switch to the up position to provide electrical power. Also, set the generator switch to the up position to prepare the generator to take over once the engine is running over 1500 to 1700 RPM. Click and hold the primer switch on the engine control panel for about 1 second to feed some fuel to the engine. When starting in cold temperatures, up to 4 seconds of prime may be necessary. We are now ready to attempt an engine start. To do so, first press and hold the starter switch to operate the starter and
プロペラが激しく回り始めて、すぐさま M レバーをライン1に動かそう。すると本格的にエンジンが始動するよ。
If you aren't able to start the engine successfully, return the fuel mixer lever to idle cutoff by left-clicking and repeat the process starting with priming the engine. Note, the engine starter can be easily overheated. The starter should not be used for more than 4 20-second attempts to start, with 15-second intervals, followed by a 5-minute cooling off period. Good start. Now we need to make sure the engine is running smoothly without any indications of a problem. Use the RPM gauge and adjust the throttle to run the engine at about 1200 to 1300 RPM. Monitor the engine gauge to check the oil pressure to reach at least 50 psi and the oil temperature to reach at least 40 degrees Celsius. Check the suction gauge to make sure it is showing a normal suction reading of 3.75 to 4.25 inches. Press the spacebar key to proceed. Check the hydraulic pressure gauge to make sure it is reading a normal pressure of 800 to 1100 psi. Check the oxygen pressure gauge to make sure it is reading a normal pressure of 400 psi. Press the spacebar key to proceed. Continue to idle the
この
engine
状
at
態でスロットルを上げすぎると、機体が前に出ようとして、プロペラ部分が地面に激突して飛べない状態になるから気をつけようね。
This concludes the engine start lesson. Well done.
エンジンの始動方法は分かったかな？ 80年以上昔の航空機だからね。現代の自動車感覚で動かせるわけじゃないからね。手こずる人は結構いるのかもしれないね。お次はエンジンを動かせたから離陸かなと思う人はいるかもしれないけどまだなんだ。次はタキシングのやり方だよ。当時の飛行機はスホイ 25T のように簡単に動かせないよ。でもこのままだと頭も目も疲れていると思うから本動画は一旦お開きだよ。続きは後編でね。